Even though I feel it should be obvious, I don't make nerd complaints about toku videos to belittle other people's opinions on what I'm covering, and it is completely okay if you disagree with me. Please do not misunderstand my intentions.
So what do you get when you put a YouTuber who's been unmotivated to do tokusatsu videos for months with the Kamen Rider show all about war, Mars, and wacky science? You get confliction.
Time Force! Power Rangers, go!
So, Kamen Rider Build, you certainly exist, alright. Yeah, ever since the first episode of the show, there have been parts of it that I'm not so fond of. So what the hell, let's talk about it. There will be spoilers here, so here's your chance to click away. Still here? Let's go then. First, a little background. Kamen Rider Build came out in 2017 after X-Aid, surrounding the mystery of Pandora Box, which split Japan into thirds due to someone, and we'll get to him. However, we get to our protagonist, Sento Kiryu. He's a snarky genius physicist who's lost his memory. He's living in a coffee shop called Nasita, which also acts as the writer's base of operation. He's hired by Todo's government to study Pandora's Box for the good of the nation by Gentoku Himuro. However, someone convicted of murdering the devil scientist Takumi Katsuragi, named Ryuga Banjo, escaped prison or a testing laboratory of Faust, yet the government soldiers are out for his arrest. It's up to Sento to not only figure out the true culprit behind Katsuragi's murder, defeat the smash experiments from Faust to make full bottles, as well as find out about his past from the villainous Night Rogue, as well as figure out who this mysterious Bloodstark is. Notice how much Sento has to do. And this leads me to my first issue.
Wow, he's fast!
With how the first arc is paced, a lot is thrown both at Sento and at the audience. With how fast everything is given in Build's first arc, it feels like it was paced to be a 31 episode season like Decade, rather than a near 50 episode season like it is. Hell, that's honestly what Build feels like. It doesn't exactly feel like one long consecutive story, rather it feels more like individual seasons with a loose connection between the two. Especially considering every episode ends with an Amazon's meme-worthy ending, like Kamen Rider Build becoming a fugitive at the end of episode 1, or that Soichi had one of Pandora panels which only Faust members should have at the end of episode 4. This kind of pacing makes the situations hard to swallow, and can easily turn newcomers away. And Pcuspard here, because goddamn I word stuff poorly. What I mean by individual seasons with a loose connection between the two are this. Kamen Rider Build for its first arc is paced like a mystery story. Everything from the misunderstanding of Banjo's arrest, Sento learning more about Soichi and Katsuragi, to learning about who's running Faust. It's largely about solving a mystery. And as soon as that's over, and we get one episode of Sento handling this new information, holy crap, it's wartime! We're going to war, kiddies! Get out your guns! It's sudden and out of nowhere.
I'm a spiritual, lyrical, individual, spiritual.
I introduced this after the pacing because that issue started before this one. Build's opening, it's kinda gross. I'm not a fan of the intro itself or the music. The intro is poorly paced, as it's really slow at some points where it feels like it should be fast-paced, and vice versa. At certain intervals of the intro, the song makes it feel like more should be happening, and yet not much does. Ultimately, this leaves Build's intro unfocused on what it wants to be. Hell, even Ghost's intro fit the music better. And speaking of the music, it grates on my ears, especially the beginning. No offense to the composers of Be The One, I'm sure they're good people, but every time I hear the beginning of Be The One, I cringe. Plus, I don't think this song fits for Kamen Rider. Most Kamen Rider songs are known for the guitar, such as Ryuki's Alive Alive, Blade's Elements, or Kiva's Break the Chain. And no, not having the guitar isn't a deal breaker considering Hibiki's Kagayaki, but if it grates on my ears, I'm not gonna like it.
You look like shit.
A majority of Build's forms look ugly to me. While there is a set few that I like, those being Build Rabbit Tank, Build Hot Gatling, Build Ninden Comic, Build Phoenix Robo, Build Rabbit Rabbit, Cross Dragon, Cross Magma, Grease, Rogue, and Bloodstock, there are far more forms I dislike. From Build, most of these come from questioning how these can even qualify as best matches. And I don't mean from a basis standpoint, but from a design standpoint. For example, Rabbit Tank. Build's base form actually looks like a best match, as the two half designs clearly relate to each other. Most other best matches like Gorillamon, Octopus Light, Kaizoku Resha, Rocket Panda, Key Dragon, Summit Bike, Fire Hedgehog, and more don't seem to look the part of best matches. The designs of the halves are too different from each other, and as such, they clash with each other. Hell, this is true for some best matches that I like, such as Rose Copter. And you know, that's another problem with Build's forms. There are so nepping many of them. This is what happens when you make your collectible trinkets not mean much in the grand scheme of things. You get several inconsequential forms in the span of 17 episodes. Hell, to exemplify this, they introduced Tori UFO, Kirin Cyclone, and Kujira Jet all within the same episode, and those forms will never be seen again. So that's fan-nepping-tastic. As for the upgrade forms of Build, there's Rabbit Tank Sparkling, Rabbit Tank Hazard, and Genius. Now, Hazard, while I originally didn't like it for how plain it was, I've changed my stance on it, because I really enjoy what it, Rabbit, and coincidentally Tank do for Sento's character. While the actual design of Hazard form has really grown on me, as various other shots of Hazard show it isn't just all black, but the armor's gray. Sparkling, on the other hand, will always look ugly to me. I think I know what it's supposed to represent for Sento's character, that his will to fight for justice is fizzing stronger within him, and how he doesn't need Isarugi's mentoring to be a good Kamen Rider. But wow, did they show it literally. All of the parts sticking out, the giant soda can of a full bottle, the effects of the rabbit and tank eyepieces, god I hate them! And then there's Genius form, which at times I confuse for a 1993 Power Rangers figure, and it's definitely because of the Build symbol front and center on the design. Not to mention how his eyepieces, shoulder pads, pretty much everywhere are bottles. And yes, this is a negative, as the bottles just make Genius's design really ugly. Oh right, I kinda forgot there were more riders. Let's get into another example of a poorly designed rider form, Cross Charge. Yeah, not even those who like Build like this form. The blue helmet being see-through isn't doing him any favors, as his eyepieces are also the same color as the helmet piece in the base helmet, making the helmet look really ugly. The armor and chest plate don't help either. The shoulder pads are too bulky and honestly get in the way, and the giant dragon chest plate does the exact same thing. And this point was helped by my pal Ryuga Kiryu, but Charge looks really plain, even without the jelly, because without that, Cross Charge just looks like a gray blank. Not to mention there's white on silver. On Kamen Rider Grease's suit, there were white linings on the gold suit, making it stand out. And guess what doesn't stand out on Cross Charge? Now let's get into Cross's repaint form to get his powers back. Great Cross. This form would look so much better if the white was made gold like the rest of the white from the suit. God, do those colors clash. It's a lot like Gem Level 0, except instead of slightly changing the color of the suit to keep the overall feel the same, they changed two big parts that clash with the rest of the suit. Plus, if you had had more of a point other than to just get his powers back, I'd probably like the suit more. Grease's design is cool, and I like how nothing gets in the way of the form. Same goes for Rogue. Though, you want to know what the best form in Kamen Rider Build is? No, seriously, it's the best upgrade ever! Grease's upgrade comes in a second Twin Breaker. What? Aren't you amazed? Like, god damn, they actually promoted this as Grease's upgrade. Hell, at least when Necrom got the Gongun catcher, it actually made some changes from the Gongun hand. He got this from a Dragon Jelly from Banjo. Where we last saw it, it was destroyed along with the Splash Driver. Where did this come from? We get no explanation of how this thing comes into existence, and it's used all of twice in the show. Yeah, I know it's not an actual new form of Grease, but why have it if you're not going to use it much? Especially since it just adds more questions than answers. And then, right at the near end of the show, Grease actually does get a final form, namely Grease Blizzard. Of course, I wouldn't be talking about it here if I didn't have some kind of problem with it. The design itself looks nice. Sure, those little blemishes of yellow on the Blizzard Knuckle and Build Driver are gross. What makes it feel worse is how forced in this form feels. This wasn't the culmination of a big part of Kazumi's arc like Cross Magma was for Ryuga, or how Genius Build acted as the joint justice of Katsuragi and Sento. Hell, one could argue that Grease's arc ended around episode 30, where he used the Hokuto Smash bottles in his final attack alongside Build Rabbit Rabbit, showing the two moving on from the death of the three as they used it as motivation to end the war. It could have been done very well. Honestly, due to Build's plot, they probably didn't even need to make a final form for Grace due to the nature of hazard levels, where intensified emotions cause riders to get stronger. Rogue's not getting another form, yet by episode 36, Grace could easily defeat him due to how high his hazard level was. As for the Faust members, I like Bloodstock's form, yet Night Rogue's feels a bit too cluttered. The steam pipes are too much on the form and the giant yellow bat comes off as gaudy compared to the darker undertones the red and green do on the suit. I don't have a lot to say about Engine Bros or Remicon Bros or their combined Hell Bros form. I don't like it, I don't hate it, they exist. Same goes for Kamen Rider Mad Rogue as well. That Evol driver is gaudy as hell on him though. Now for Kamen Rider Evol. Holy this form looks like This takes glitter to a whole new level, especially in those shoulder pads. Like, wow, those shoulder pads are huge. Honestly, they get in the way of the design, and the navy blue clutters with the red and gold. And considering Evol is Bloodstock, who's known for being very movement-centric, this makes movements done by Evol to be really awkward. And most of these are continued with Evol Dragon and Evol Rabbit. Am I watching the Destroyer of Mars or f***ing Mario?
Hey everybody, look, I'm wearing a random new shirt every week. Ain't I funny? Yeah, you know what? That's the joke. We're going with that. I better get fucking paid for this.
God, Gentoku, what have they revealed for you? If you've seen previous Kamen Riders such as Drive or X-Aid, you might have noticed a small pattern where the purple-colored antagonist / villain rider gets reformed and joins the heroes at around the late 20s or early 30s. There's also this bit of a theme with them being placed in more humorous situations, and a similar pattern happens with Kamen Rider Rogue. However, with how it's done for him, it comes out of nowhere. With Chaser, his humorous antics derive from his robotic delivery and his interactions with other members of Team Drive, which cause him to want to be more human. As for Gem, he focuses a large amount of time on his godly talents as a sociopath, so a large amount of the humor comes from his godly antics and telling other members of CR to call him by his Haya name. As for Rogue, a lot of the humor comes from his lack of style or fashion sense. There's a scene where Sento cuts to intermission during a conversation because he can't take Gentoku seriously. And honestly, I have a hard time blaming him. My biggest issue with this is that, funnily enough, there's no build-up. We've had no time to build Gentoku as a comic relief in order for this to make sense. Chase's lack of human emotion made sense for his character, as he was the first Roimute and was conditioned to just be a warrior for justice. Nothing more and nothing less. Putting him into these human situations naturally is what made these scenarios with him funny in my eyes, especially with the reactions he got out of Shinosuke and Go. As for Kuroto, his sociopathic tendencies were made aware of about as early as episode 18, and considering his logic about how he can create and destroy life, namely of the bugsters as he sees fit, you can sort of see his logic with him believing to be a god, and this has made his situations even funnier to me. With Gentoku, we don't have that prior knowledge of his poor fashion sense, as most of the other time spent with Gentoku was when he was a villain or being forced to fight for Saito due to the bomb chip he had implanted in him. Since we don't have that prior knowledge, the jokes about Gentoku don't make me laugh. They make me groan as we get another comic relief character.
Anarchos did it!
Honestly, it's due to Build's main villain that I cannot call Kamen Rider Build a completely good Rider series. Bloodstock / Evil being the cause of all conflicts lowers the meaning of the story that can be used to develop the other villains of the show. This is considering that all of these villains with weak motivations aside from Gentoku as Rogue just end up being pawns to stock and don't have their own way to stand out. Utsumi working for Namba Heavy Industries with an extensive love for it? Who cares? Stock
Needs screen time.
Banjo finding out that Night Rogue experimented on his girlfriend to make her into a smash? Nah, turns out that was all Stock's fault to raise Banjo's hazard level. Sento's mentor and father figure betrays him? Nah, turns out that's not Soichi at all! It is in fact an alien that took control over his mind! We could develop our Hell Bros to make them interesting mooks, like Graphite, Sigurd, Medic, Mazul, and Phoenix of years prior, But nah, let's let Stock eat up all the screen time with this incredibly basic-ass motive of I want to destroy this world because fuck it. Already destroyed Mars, what else can I do with my time? So much that the Hellbros just flat out disappear for an episode. And even when they do die, I don't care, because they aren't good characters, if you can even call them characters. All of the conflicts and builds can be factored down to Stock did it. And when your main villain can be described in the same way as Fire Emblem Fates and Nonkos, I think we've got a problem. Not to mention Evol's motivations, or lack thereof. Oh yeah, all that planning, all that manipulation, turning Japan to hell, causing a civil war that ruined the lives of millions of people, all just because he can. I mean, that's all I can get from these episodes. After everything that Evol has caused, I was wondering what his motive was. Why would he go through with the complete annihilation of Earth? Or better yet, why would he go through with the complete annihilation of Mars? All because he can. Evol has quite literally no motivation to do what he's doing. So much that when he's entertained by Utsumi losing his mind and swearing allegiance to Evol, allowing Utsumi to transform using a second Evol driver into Kamen Rider Mad Rogue, he reveals that he doesn't care about destroying Earth anymore, and he just wants to rule the country all of a sudden, and then he wants to destroy the world again. God, even a Nonkos didn't shift his goals this much. I'm sorry, but one of my favorite parts of a villain are their motivations. If they've got next to none, then I'm not going to care about the villain on screen, and I'm gonna be aggravated whenever I see him in action. That being said, no, Build obviously isn't all terrible. As while the story is important, most of the characters, keyword being most, are entertaining to watch and enjoyable to root for. Sento, thankfully, is a good and diverse lead role that Emu also had in X-Aid compared to the rest of the show. His interactions with Banjo are funny as hell. The main cast has so much chemistry with each other, ultimately making the show an excellent science experiment, especially when Grease joins Team Build, as most of his humor comes from butting heads with Banjo due to how he just up and decides to join them. IMO, Kamen Rider Build is definitely really mediocre. So, I'm done complaining now.